Civilization 7 is broken in many ways, however when spying a certain leader's bonus, I needed to see if I could achieve a military victory without building a single army unit. During this game, I discovered a lot of broken mechanics, all of which led to this epic finale. However, could I pull it off? Let's find out. As you would have seen from the thumbnail, Charlemagne is our choice of leader, with a bonus that lends happiness adjacency on science and military buildings for every quarter in that settlement, which is perfect to start with, and I'll explain why shortly. But looking at this second bonus, and the one you're all here for, he grants 2 free cavalry units when a celebration begins, whilst also giving them +5 combat strength in that celebration time. So we're not only going to receive a full front line of cavalry, but with later social policies, they will hit harder than Grand. If this wasn't enough, I took the extra expansionist point to help maintain more cities, and the big one, granting us a huge +2 happiness per cavalry unit. Like I said, this is about to get ridiculous. As for our antiquity age civ, the Mauryaans made this even better, if that was possible, giving us access to these beautiful elephant cavalry units. Yeah, I'm not going to try and pronounce that. However, they grant another +5 combat strength for this cavalry, so we're going to have some fun with these soon. On top of this, they have a unique settler, granting +2 happiness on city halls, starting our cities off well once they've been converted, allowing us to maintain more happiness within our empire and achieve those sweet celebrations. Finally, we have our unique quarter, the Mather, giving us a further 10% happiness in that settlement, which is made up of the Dharamshala offering +3 more happiness and +1 science adjacency bonus for quarters and wonders, and the Vihara supplying quarters and mountains around them with +3 happiness and +1 culture. So now that we have our master plan and a very broken mix-up in place, it's time to see if we can achieve the modern age militaristic victory. From the looks of our starting location, after settling Pataliputra, we have some great resource surrounding us already. Incense for +10 science, dates for 2 extra food and happiness, wool for 2 extra production and happiness, and gold giving us a +20% towards purchasing buildings. I'm leaving out the iron here as we are not after the extra combat strength for infantry, so we will still need to hunt for some horses to help with that. The first scout was made and I was only allowed to make them if there was no other buildings available at the time. However, missionaries later on down the line are okay here, but we'll get back to them. As for now, we started building a granary and picked up 2 goodie huts. One I chose culture from, as that is going to be an issue for a while, and the other we picked some extra science, as we don't care too much about achieving a celebration just yet until we have unlocked cavalry, which was quite a way off. So if anybody started an early war with me, I was toast. Finally, I did remember to use my expansionist point, giving us a nice 25% production towards settlers, whilst making my final scout. This was when I bumped into my first civ, offering Lafayette a friendly greeting in the hopes of him not being angry with me just yet. As I mentioned before, war now equals death. We got our first social policy shortly after, slotting in a +1 production and science in our palace. We were pushing for science now, researching writing for these libraries, in the hopes of unlocking the wheel for cavalry soon, and to get our bonuses. So I went for the civic, giving me my unique district, in the hopes of getting that down for the extra happiness, culture and science that offers. Oligarchy was our choice for the celebration age to give us a +20% growth in our settlements, but without cavalry, this wouldn't matter as we were missing the best part. Soon after, I met Ahsoka and Machiavelli, also receiving a friendly greeting as we continued to grow our empire and resources whilst queuing our first 2 settlers to push our lands further. Finally, we began researching writing as we settled Sally down for camels and a future mining town before our first celebration happened in turn 21. But we won't be gaining anything just yet as we are still a way off the wheel, but the extra food will help. I started working my capital for more production so I could build those happiness districts as early as possible, and with libraries around the corner, I inserted +3 happiness on science buildings into my social policies until realizing the independent people of Caithness were sending troops to my towns, so I needed to befriend them now. As I was waiting and hoping for them to wander off, first of my unique district buildings were being built, and our new future fishing town, Suvanagiri, had settled whilst leapfrogging to the sheep for that extra happiness. This is when things suddenly started to get quite tense, as Machiavelli denounced me and we had to start researching animal husbandry so we could attempt to have some units before he declared war. But we were way off yet. We built up a library in our capital, but now the independent people of Cirta began to trudge through my lands from the south, and I was feeling sandwiched from all ends and believed that this tactic may not be pulled off too easily. As I was waiting for the inevitable, I built the Vihara, completing our Martha for that 10% extra happiness, and from the civic tree, we got ourselves a migrant to give more population to Thessaly, and whilst also picking up my first codex. Eventually, we had enough influence to start befriending Cirta, as I began to focus more on buildings with happiness, such as the altar. Going back to civics now, we started to research the code of laws for merchants, which were a great way to keep another civilization friendly with you, or at least not denouncing you like we've already had. As Caithness' first gift, I received my first unit that could fight, and although only a warrior, this was much better than having nothing at all. And as we were now researching irrigation, it would not be long before cavalry becomes available. I bought some altars in towns to increase our happiness even more until receiving another warrior, but this time I don't actually know where these came from. Whilst waiting for more buildings to become available, I began to build a great steel, as the extra gold could be nice. However, another celebration came in, giving me more growth, another social policy slot, and some extra combat bonus for my units. Eventually, we were researching the wheel, and we were getting close to breaking the game, but just how broken is this going to be? Well, before we see that, I begged and pleaded with Machiavelli to reconcile whilst creating a trade route to him, in the hopes that he wouldn't come after me, as even with 2 cavalry units once I get them, I wasn't going to be able to take him on. But during that time, we had actually completed the Great Steel, and it is the Great Steel that shall be known as the start of my great empire, as it was now that the wheel had been learnt, and at the same time, my empire celebrated, granting me my first 2 sets of elephants. From Cirta, I was given another warrior, and seeing Lafayette with 1 city, I was certain I could take them out. As they all travelled down, Rasilla, another future farm town, had been settled, and as a new alliance with Ahsoka was forged in stone, I denounced Lafayette and prepared for war. Whilst we were gearing up and ready to go, slotting a new policy for +4 happiness on military buildings, Machiavelli denounced me again, and realizing I had made a mistake moving all my units south, I had to quickly rush them back up and prepare for this inevitable war. Attempting to hold him back, I tried to improve trading relations with him, but this caused him to forget the waiting, and war had finally begun. This, however, sparked another celebration for my civ, and more cavalry was recruited. Not only that, but they also had their celebration combat strength buffs, allowing me to push him back, and once I placed in my first specialist, it was time to take the fights to his cities. It really wasn't long before my new army that was just handed to me on a plate took his first city before moving into Roma and slowly but surely taking control of there too, giving me another celebration and even more units. It's safe to say this has already shown its power. However, I know we can push the limits much higher, and we haven't even scraped the surface yet. Whilst this was great, and I was still maintaining a surplus of happiness, I was now over my settlement limit, and some cities were becoming unhappy. And attempting to end the war quickly, I had all of my units charged south to take out his final city. Getting there though, I saw something else completely broken. He literally had a stack of archers that almost wiped out one of my units in a turn, so I pulled them back and ran in with the rest together. This was a real battle, fighting through all of the arrows, but with the extra combat strength, this herd of elephants trampled through them all. And whilst fighting them, the crisis began, and now became the battle of happiness in smaller settlements. And this was something I knew I had to work on in the next age, until finally, I took control of the last city, ending Machiavelli and making him regret starting war against the infinite cavalry. Then began the push for happiness, as I decided that maybe I should hold off on war for the rest of this age and get ready for the new lands. And at this point, I had forgotten about getting all the legacy points for this age. However, after building the Sanchi Stupa, giving +2 happiness and 1 culture for every 5 surplus in happiness in that settlement, going through more of a crisis and finally making sure all my towns were happy, I was given control of Anka Bore, completing my military legacy path and confirming that this tactic was working. We were also not too far off the merchant path, but that would not be completed as the antiquity age came to an end. With a successful first stage, we now had to choose our next civilization to lead, and with that, the Normans were probably the best fit for this challenge. And you will see why. With their unique cavalry units of Chevalier, granting us +3 combat strength against slower units, they also offered land units +1 movement when embarked, and if they are adjacent to the coast, they get a furthermore +5 combat strength. However, do you believe we need more cavalry? As the game certainly does, as building their unique district, the Donjon, grants us another cavalry unit when completed. With the Normans selected, it's now time to select our legacies. With +2 settlement limit to prevent too much unhappiness from going over, 2 economic points as I feel gold will be needed to help buy happiness buildings in my town, 1 science attribute point, a diplomatic point, an expansionist point, and +1 culture and happiness for all wonders. And to start the exploration age, our settler began growing up, I guess, before our first celebration hits, giving me our first 3 cavalry units of this age. And it wasn't long before I settled Fee Camp for some later treasure fleets, and another celebration happened. Yep, we're already going crazy with cavalry here. We started placing down some observatories to keep our science high, as I needed to make sure that I had the best cavalry I could before founding our religion, choosing evangelism and giving us 1 relic for every distant land settlement converted, as well as +4 happiness for every foreign settlement following. Now, here's where the first issue of the age began, as Confucius made a bold entrance, placing their new town right where I wanted mine, stealing my treasure fleet resource, so once my cavalry army could cross the seas, the war would be on. Another celebration though had started, as the people clearly wanted me to take the new lands and pillage what is rightfully ours. And so, I settled our new town in the new distant island, in the hopes of using this as a fishing town, and it was now that I started to research shipbuilding, so we were getting close to our international cavalry raids. Something I was not excited about though, was finding out I was bordering Napoleon, and with no army on that side to defend, I could only hope he would be nice for now. We got another celebration not long after though, and this clearly scared Confucius, as he left his city and allowed the independents to take it over and burn it to the ground, giving me the location to take for my own. Now it was finally time though, as my horses had finally learnt to swim, and the mass cavalry navy began to make me feel increasingly happy, worryingly so. But this would make sense as we were getting +2 happiness per cavalry unit, don't forget. Thank you, mementos. Our first treasure fleets were ready, and with those getting back and depositing us some legacy points, our cavalry had touched land. And so, I hoped we could catch Napoleon by surprise, as Stockholm did with me, forcing me to send back a man-at-arms, and cavalry unit to make sure we didn't lose our treasure fleets before I denounced Napoleon and prepared for war. As the war was off in my distant lands, my homeland cities were happy building universities, increasing my science more so, which we were keeping on top of, whilst having some great happiness related social policies. And then out of the blue, an alliance formed between me and Confucius, which would help spread out Napoleon's armies. But whilst waiting, we built some menageries for their happiness, dispersed Stockholm, and finished building the House of Wisdom, giving me more science and relic slots. Now though, it was time. Readying my horses, we went to Napoleon, charging through his settlement and reaching another celebration, giving me more cavalry for this war, and already we had our first commendation on our only general, giving units in his aura +5 combat strength. This pushed the scale so much more in my favour, as we took Chennai, followed by Caen and then Tikal, and this right here is what made me feel so confident to gain complete victory in the modern age, as we could not be stopped. But look at all these happiness buildings. However, realising I had accidentally not selected the enhanced belief that converts captured settlements to your religion, I bought some missionaries to convert them for those extra military legacy points. As we were now pushing our settlement limit, we settled for peace, forcing him to give me his biggest town, completing our military legacy path for this age, and so began the crisis. Luckily, these weren't too bad, and not bothering too much about religion until now meant that most of my settlements weren't even following mine. With that, the age was over and we were so close to completing the fleet and collecting all relics. However, it was now that the modern age began, and in which we have tanks, which, get this, count as cavalry. But which civilization was best to pick here? Our only choice that helped in any way appeared to be the French, that allow us to select any standard celebration effect, plus offering a unique quarter giving +2 happiness on quarters in that city, which isn't as great, but our happiness is at a point now where celebrations just keep coming. For our legacies, I selected infantry and range units in all distant land settlements, which is insane. 1 military attribute point, 4+ happiness in all settlements not following my religion, +2 gold per turn for each unique resource, and an economical point. But as we begin the modern age, I began building groceries for more food in our cities, converting our towns that were previously cities back into cities, and began pushing the tech tree for tanks. Yep, again, tanks do count as cavalry, so this is about to get silly. For now though, I tried to reconcile with Napoleon, as I did not want to start a war until I know who has an opposing ideology for those final victory points. The first 2 celebrations came in really quickly, and luckily with a high gold yield, when I research tanks, we will be able to convert every single horse unit to an explosive firing metal box on wheels or treads. Eventually, combustion was being researched, which was an exciting time, and another celebration happened. This is getting ridiculous, whilst adding in an insane social policy for us, -2 gold on cavalry units. So yeah, we're barely paying for them now. With combustion done, the fun can begin, as we now wanted to learn about flight, as I continued to convert all of my cavalry to tanks. Another celebration began, and our army was looking unstoppable. However, to make things better, I built the Doggo Onsen, the broken wonder, growing all settlements after a celebration instead of a single settlement, which it says it does. And we were looking in a great place now. All that we needed was fascism. Confucius, however, felt it was a good idea to settle a new city by me. Could they be my first target here? But as I was awaiting another civilization to choose an ideology, Oxford University was built. Combustion 2 had been researched for +3 combat strength on cavalry, and Back finally became a city. Finally though, Asrock converted to communism, giving me my first target, and being on my homeland would go perfectly, especially considering he had started pushing the relics, and I could not have him sneak in a culture victory. Another celebration came in, giving me more tanks to push up to their borders, gaining a diplomatic point, giving me a plus 50% celebration length, which is huge considering one of the options we can select here is plus 3 combat strength for all units during a celebration. Yep, they don't know what's about to hit them. And war had begun as we rushed our tanks in. However, the amount of wars they had and no siege units actually attacking their district was going to cause us a lot of problems. But in the south, Kiev was captured. And as we headed over to Sparta, I hadn't even noticed that they took it back, so we claimed Sparta and held out for now as they healed up. The more I pushed towards their big city, the harder it got. With no way of getting more reinforcements and having to keep a good portion of my army on the other continent, I was spread too thin, and so I had to retreat for now and go for the smaller cities. However, in my own cities, whilst defending, we can hold them off until the end of time, but I didn't want to waste any more turns as I had already set them back. And so I offered them peace, so long as they give me that city I worked so hard taking down 3 of their districts. And they did. I attempted to reconcile with Ahsoka for now, and another celebration hit, giving me more cavalry as the ones from the previous war healed up and waited for their next target. Napoleon started war on me. That was the wrong time for that, you silly, small little man. The ranged unit there was actually a huge help as we dove our tanks into Koba, and after a long fight, it was under my control. And so I sent some tanks over to the sea to take on an unguarded water town and their next city, Beiping. And just like that, another celebration begins, pushing my combat strength up greatly. And even at war, at this point, I am still on over 1,000 happiness surplus per turn. And so it wasn't long before both Beiping and Tenderma were taken over. Whilst the war continued, my homeland were working on the transatlantic flight for a bit of fun, and hearing this, knowing we weren't even using our full might, Napoleon came crying to me with a peace offering, giving me Londres, which was my next target anyway, and after accepting it, appeared to be just what I needed to complete the military legacy path. So now all that I had to do was hold anybody off and keep them happy as I began to understand the secrets of the Manhattan Project, which was really sad considering I couldn't own a plane to actually use the nukes. Not long after though, the Manhattan Project was complete, closely followed by Operation Ivy, and as I watched our final test, it appeared to me that if you can gain a military victory without building a single unit, maybe something here is a little broken. So that is it for this one. However, if there's any combination of challenges you think I should try, then please let me know in the comments. We will have more Civ 7 content on the channel, so please go check that out. Like this video to help me out and subscribe so you don't miss any of the content, and I will catch you all in the next one.